Hey, deserving listeners, love is blind. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. As always, keep in mind that everything I say is complete speculation, total speculation, based on an edited reality TV show. So keep that in mind. Let's watch.
I do want you to tell me when something's bothering you. You really need to work on your delivery. 1,000%.
Okay. So she starts off by saying, I do want you to tell me when you have a complaint. And that's great. And then she says, but you really have to work on your delivery. Okay. Well, on one hand, that is probably accurate given the landscape, given her sensitivities. I wish that she would say, you really have to work on your delivery because I get triggered easily. And I've been to a lot of therapy, and I know that I have preoccupied attachment and my abandonment traumas. And so I need some special care. And I kind of think that you need to tell me more about your feelings or something, because that would help. So I think both people can play a role in that. He could work. He doesn't have to say clingy. That's not. There's so many other ways of describing that, and I've already role played some of that. But also, he was, before he said clingy, he had said a number of things that she was not open to hearing. And so I think it's kind of wishful thinking that she's totally okay with feedback. I think once she goes down a road, which is typical for people with more moderate, severe versions of this, they're not of their rational mind when they get into that state. So maybe when she's calm, she can say that, but I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be. The other thing that's happening is that, as with the last fight makeup, the narrative is kind of like it's all his fault. I mean, it's not really that as stark as it was last time. And no one is to fault and both are to fault. That's the systemic creed, is that or credo. When it comes to systems thinkers, relational therapists like myself, and we're kind of rare because our training is actually kind of rare, but the mindset is no one is to blame and everyone's to blame. Now, there are situations where one person is to blame, like with abuse, but this is not that. This is both people. If they want this to get better, both people can change things and enhance things. They can enhance things they're doing well. They can change things that they're not doing well. Both people can do that. It doesn't matter who's to blame. And really, both people play at least some percentage of the role. We might even say, she's responsible for 70% of the problem. He's responsible for 30, or vice versa. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Everyone focuses, particularly when you're in it, but even viewers, it doesn't help to do that. It doesn't help to have that mindset, because if you watch the show and that's typical, like when I train my students, I spend a lot of time trying to break them of that. It's a paradigm shift, meaning that whole assumptions and the viewpoint that you have has to be shifted. You can't just say, I'm going to adopt this way of looking at things. There's so many resistances to this notion, this helpful notion of let's get away from blame. It's not helpful. Let's look at the pattern. Let's look at the sequence. Let's look at each person's role and what the whole system can do to improve the situation, what the whole system can do to create a new homeostasis, a new pattern that works. Even if, in my view, let's say me and my wife get into some kind of destructive pattern, if she's 99% to blame and I'm 1% to blame, it doesn't matter to me. I'm not going to say, well, it's your problem, you work on it. I'm going to say, like, I'm in it to win it, so let's work on this, both of us, And if we both work on it and it gets better, then who cares who was more to blame? Are we on this planet to win the blame game or to live a happy life where our needs are being met?
Yeah.
And I need to work on my emotions and being sensitive. I'm fully aware of that.
That's a fair statement.
Okay. Some of you are probably like, wait, Kirk. Okay, good. I have chills. I'm encouraged. I was waiting for that. Yes. Okay. Thank God. Because without that, you're lost. So now I do understand from my contact on the show that Chelsea has been in a lot of individual therapy. And I think Chelsea's talked publicly about it. So, depending, in all likelihood, that's helping with all this, but you never know. So anyway, that's great. I'm sensitive. Even that word. Let's rewind.
You really need to work on your delivery. 1,000%.
Yeah.
And I need to work on my emotions and being sensitive. I'm fully aware of that.
I need to work on my emotions and being sensitive. Yeah, I don't know what she means by that. I would hope underneath that is a conceptualization regarding why she is sensitive, and that just using willpower to overcome your sensitivity will never work. So I hope she will eventually have an understanding and a system to not only be aware of it and to conceptualize it in the moment. The one way of looking at it is that, like, when I played football, that in any sport really, you don't want to have to be thinking about the next move. Like I was running back, and when you get the ball, you get set in your stance, and then hike, and the snap of the ball, and then you have a particular direction you're running. The handoff happens. You hit the hole, and you try to find space, sunlight through the crowd, so you can at least get 5 yards, maybe 50. And if you are thinking about each move, each step along the way, you'll be so slow, they'll tackle you in the backfield. If you're like, okay, I need to run this way, I need to make sure my arms are a certain way, I need to hold the ball in a certain way, I need to make sure that you can't do that. It has to be completely automatic. And this is why when people are watching sports and they will criticize something that a player is doing, typically what I'm thinking is it's not a conscious thought, because things are happening so fast that there's a lot of instinct and automaticness. You'll even ask people after they come off the field, like, what were you thinking when you caught that ball and stuff? And sometimes they have a little bit of awareness, but a lot of times, in all likelihood, things are happening so fast that they don't really remember. So how do they get there? Well, it's practice. It's repetition. When you're not in a game, right? You're relaxed on Wednesday and you're just going through the reps. You're practicing, like with running, it was understanding the instinct of spin or moves or jukes, or when to slow down, when to, really put in the speed, when to put your shoulder down and get into someone, how to keep your feet, how to hold the ball automatically. You can't be thinking about how you're going to hold the ball. It just needs to be automatic. Someone comes at you from the right, and your ball is on the right. You just have to instinctually. You don't just have that instinct. It's through repetition, practice. It's like golf, right? The first time you hit a ball, it's horrible, and you're thinking about every single thing. It needs to just be fluid. That's practice and practice and practice. When it comes to emotion and sensitivity, it's the same thing. You have to, when you're calm, practice awareness, practice regulation, practice repetition. Come game time, the automatic systems will kick in. You can't say, no NFL player says, I don't need practice. I'll figure it out come game time. That's what really matters. Nobody does that. Everyone understands that's not going to work. So I hope that she has some way. And sometimes you can practice a couple. Like I'll have a couple in my office, and typically they're not fighting in the moment. They're talking about a fight. And so once we get to resolving the fight, then it's like, okay, let's prepare for the next fight. I'll say, you're going to fight again. Everyone does. So what can we do? Let's go through the reps. Let's practice. What are you feeling right now? Your body awareness. How's your breathing? What does your torso feel like? What does your stomach feel? What's your neck feel like? Physical sensation, especially for him, but even for her, she might be so preoccupied and other focused that she doesn't even know really what she's feeling. So step one, what am I feeling? What am I observing? Where am I? Who am I? What's at stake? And if I can gauge that pretty well on the distress scale from 1 to 10, and I notice, I'm a 6 or I'm a 4. Well, that means that I know from repetition that when I'm a 4, I'm not exactly thinking straight. Even though I feel calm, I'm not actually calm because I'm a 4. So my brain must be interpreting things in the way that it does when it's a 4. For her, she will start to interpret things negatively. For him, I'm guessing he interprets things as a threat and he will shut down. So for him, he would have to be aware when I'm a 4, I know that I am in all likelihood consciously thinking I'm okay and I have no emotion, but in all likelihood I'm having emotion. So I have to, repetition, practice. When you're calm, so that come game day, it just happens automatically with a little bit of intention.
That's a fair statement. All right, I need to focus on my wording. What I said was disrespectful. You love me and you care about me, and that is all I could want. I'm sorry and I love you, and there were things that you said too that they don't change my opinion, because I'm not gonna judge you for what you say to me when you're emotional over something I said.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah. Overall, this whole conversation, if this is where it ends, then I would give this a pretty good grade. Maybe a B. If for it to be an A, just more of the things that I was hoping that would happen. What do I think about this overall? Maybe more like a C, because I'm encouraged by what they're saying, and particularly what she just said regarding that she knows that. I don't know what she means by I need to work on my emotions and my sensitivity. I don't know what exactly that means, but the awareness of it is a huge thumbs up. But I don't know if they actually understand that this absolutely is going to happen again, and might even be worse, because that tends to happen. I don't know if they have any actual workable plan on what to do in the moment come game day. I don't know if they have that, because a lot of people, and there's signs that they might be in this camp where they just say, okay, problem solved, we figured it out, we just won't do that again. Agreed. And then they just go back to their life, and then it happens again, and the same factors they kick in. And the problem is that if that's the only option, is like, well, we're just going to rely on willpower, the next time it happens again, it feels so much more demoralizing, because to the individuals, they're like, well, we said we weren't going to do it again, and then it happened again. We must be a bad couple, or my partner must be a bad person, or I'm a bad person. But they didn't even know that there was this other way, this other pathway. And it can get deep. The kind of things that I'm guessing both of them need to work on, it's pretty involved. Emotional awareness, trauma recovery, understanding the models that they've paid attention to, even the own damage they've done to each other. That isn't likely to have just faded.
Mm-hmm.
I think we both said a couple things that hurt each other, and honestly, all this is really distracting for me, and I'm here for you. I want to make you happy. I want to be with you, and
I'm also happy to hear that he is holding on to at least a balanced equation of, okay, I did some things, you did some things, because last time, and then we heard when he was talking to her friends, he's like, I'm willing to apologize. I'm willing to essentially take full responsibility as long as someone hears me. And I was worried about that, because that probably isn't going to feel good to him if he is never allowed to say, hey, I think you were part of it. She's nodding her head and agreeing, but I don't know. But I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged. But I remember saying the same thing about Nick and Danielle. So I don't like it emotionally when I see tragedies happen that are unexpected. So if I allow part of my brain to at least think it could happen, then that'll make the tragedy less painful to watch, but I'll hope for the best.
believe it or not, I love you so much more now that I've met your friends.
You stress me out, boy. Don't leave me again. I didn't like
Leave
that.
you. Leave you. Oh, I
night.
won't leave you.
Okay, so they're getting into this conversation, and if I were there, I would say, well, we need to talk about how either one of you manages taking a break from that conversation, because, yeah, it wasn't going anywhere. In fact, this is a general statement I'll tell everyone. There comes a point in a fight that it does no good to continue communicating. You're just damaging things. Neither person is listening. Neither person has the capacity to handle any, even if it's kind, assertive feedback. They're just there's just no point. So, and that's temporary. It's your emotions, it's your adrenaline. It's overworking of certain neuronal pathways in your brain. Your executive function is working overtime to like keep things together and not completely flip out, even in your own mind. And brains get tired too. Neurons get tired too, just like muscles do. They run out of gas, and you can't expect yourself to function. So the answer, just like when you're thirsty, you drink water. When you are in that state, you just take a break, even if you just stare at the wall. So you need to have a way to take a break. And this notion, I'm particularly not a fan, because if she's like, don't leave me again, even if it's just a break in the conflict, and then if he does it again, which might even be functional, she will say, you promised you wouldn't do that, and they need a couples therapist.
I don't know if you went home. I don't know if you went to the bar. I didn't know.
You think I went to the bar?
I don't know.
Jesus, at work. It's a Tuesday night.
It's also a little worrisome that I think she has this mode that she goes into where she plays off, maybe even in her own mind, that it's this kind of funny thing that happened. But I imagine that the state that she was in, I've treated so many clients like this, and the look on her face and what had happened just from her building up to that, there's a chance that she was deeply suffering. I don't know that, but it's okay to have some levity, of course, but we're seeing a pattern. I think there's a chance she doesn't know what to do with that amount of suffering and that amount of negativity that she engages in. She says, I don't know where you were. I didn't know if you left me or you went to the bar, ha ha ha. When if we rewind the clock 12 hours and talk to her, she would be in she wouldn't just be at home going, I don't know where he is, like in this very casual way. She would be like extremely negative. She might even, I don't know, but it's not uncommon for people that exhibit this behavior to show signs and eventually tell me that they chronically have these spikes in extreme emotion all the time. And the negative thoughts that are also chronic are, at least some extent present all the time with spikes at times. It's demoralizing to the point, and it can go all the way back to when they were a child. That is so demoralizing that suicide is often something that people think about because life seems hopeless. It's not hopeless. With treatment, there's a lot of hope, especially if you find a specialist, but it's not uncommon. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's present as well. I don't know. I think with Nick and Danielle, we might have heard something along those lines. But clinically speaking, people who present like this, I would say, given what I've seen, I would give it at least a 50% chance that there's been at least some of that, if not, for people that I'm thinking of that I've treated, the best case scenario before they recover is that it's just always in the back of their mind, but it's not like a major plan or thought or motivation or intention. And then when things get real bad, especially when it's chronic over time or a relationship just ends, then it becomes very present and contemplated, maybe even attempted. It could have, I don't know, but it could have been very serious the night before. And then she goes into this mode, I think, as a way either to mask the pain and the seemingly unanswerable question, she's masking it from herself, and or she doesn't want other people to know. She's sort of like, it's so funny. I'm just this, goofy person. I don't know where you were. I would much rather have her say, hey, I just have to tell you, like when you left, I started thinking about all sorts of things. And I'm not saying that I'm not trying to fight. I'm just saying like I was really in a state. I was, but I don't know. Maybe it is kind of a silly thing to her.
I thought about coming back too. When I did text you and tell you I love you. You can't hold that against me for the rest of your life either.
You can't.
Because you said one thing that I want to call out. Can I?
What?
Okay, so he is, I think, accurately predicting that she will use it against him in the future. And he's basing it on something that he's seen. And I think he's about to say, you already have a catalog. And that's what preoccupied people will do. There's two main reasons. One is that preoccupied people, they're so preoccupied and so other focused that a lot of their memory and processing power is dedicated to paying attention to the other person, and thus they just remember a lot of things about the other person, not just the bad times, but everything. So there's that. But the other main reason is that they've learned over time, maybe even when they were 3 years old, that a way of alerting others to the abandonment that they're terrified of, a way of making other people really pay attention to them, is to have ammunition, is to be able to have a zinger and say, no, you did this to me. And the perception from the preoccupied person is, and maybe it works sometimes, is that the attachment figure will not know what to say, or they'll feel bad, or they'll avoid doing it again in the future because they don't want something to be hung over their head, even though they didn't do necessarily anything wrong. So it is a concern. So let's see what evidence he has about this.
What?
You told me you're never going to initiate sex again. Mm-hmm. Really? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that changes my opinion on things.
And you said, I didn't even want to have sex with you last night. I wanted to pull back.
I didn't mean I didn't want to have sex with you.
Okay, well, this is a bit different than I thought it was happening. But they're playing the fun music. This is not a fun conversation. They're light in their tone, but this is a pretty weighty conversation, actually, because it has to do with consent. It has to do with emotional coercion and influence. I don't know. I don't even know. I don't know what he was perceiving. He could have been perceiving something wrong. But the way you worded it, I think, was that he felt like he didn't really have a choice to say no in that moment. It sounds like if left to his own devices, he would have said, not now, maybe later. Anyway, so she's saying she's never going to initiate again. I kind of doubt that actually would happen. But this conversation is a very worthy conversation, but I don't know if they're actually going to get to the core and have self-awareness around it. Like, I don't know, but there are two kind of scenarios that her response could be more optimistic for me. One is she could say, oh yeah, so what were you saying yesterday? And then she could say, well, I want to be clear that if you weren't up for it in that moment, I was okay with that. I don't know what I was doing, but that's awful that you felt like I was kind of cornering you about that. If you're not in the mood, I might be a little disappointed, but I'm certainly not going to be angry at you or punish you or something. Or another optimistic response would be she could say, yeah, yesterday because I thought you were pulling away from me, I was getting kind of desperate, and I thought maybe if we had sex that I wouldn't feel that way anymore. And so I wasn't really, I also wanted to have sex with you, but I also had a need, and I probably should have just said I had that need or I had that worry. I should have said that instead of, apparently I gave you the vibe that it wasn't just me hitting on you. There was some desperation behind it, and I'm sorry for that. I shouldn't have done that. That would be encouraging. Or she could say, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. Why did you think that it was some kind of mandate or something? At least there'd be that, but they're not kind of going in that direction. Maybe they will off camera. Hopefully they will.
What I meant to say was, you initiated it, and I am happy you initiated it. So please don't, please, don't discontinue initiating it. Oh my God.
And that's reparative, and probably is music to her ears, and good of him to say that. And he's also saying it selfishly, which is good. He's connecting with his needs, and it gels with hers as well. So that's good. But again, I wish they had a lot. I wish I would have a lot of questions about what emotionally was going on between the two of them the day before when they were on their way to having sex. I'm feeling good. Yeah. And by the way, I hate to say this, but I have no idea about them. Just want to be clear. However, I've treated a lot of different couples and individuals. I've also treated a lot of court-mandated intimate partner violence, people who were convicted in court of a domestic violence crime, and a part of their sentence was to go through a mandated treatment program. And I spent a lot of time with the perpetrators and got to know the syndrome, the way they talk, their traumas, how to pull them out of that. And I've also treated a lot of perpetrators in my office. There'll be times when I will have a client, and at some point I will realize or suspect that a client who I like and have bonded with is being abusive to their partner in some way. It probably isn't hitting. It's probably emotional control, criticism, abuse. And I will assess it more, and then I will tell them. I don't usually use the word abuse right up front, but eventually I do, because I want them to really understand what's happening. Most people have this notion of what an abusive person is like. They're this asshole narcissist, thing. And that is not my experience. Those people exist, but the vast majority of people who have a pattern of abuse and coercion, control in an intimate relationship, they are likable, good people, well-meaning people. They're trying. They're traumatized, and they have a way of dealing with attachment, disruption, and worry that is abusive. And in the moment, they think they're completely justified because of what was modeled to them, how it feels, their distorted perceptions, but it's not, obviously. And so I just want to say that. And the things that I'm seeing right now are things that I've seen clinically that eventually I found out, or they went down a road that it did become abusive. They're in the very beginning. And we all understand that abusive relationships don't start off abusive. They start off often with a lot of love and a lot of warmth and a lot of connection. And over time, the system, the way it's worded is that the abusive person is trying to suck you in before they can abuse you. That certainly can happen, but typically the way that I conceptualize it is that the abusive person is not setting out to abuse. They're not like, ooh, I hope one day I get to abuse this person. There are some rare individuals that are like that, but the typical abusive person that's definitely not in their plan. But their attachment reactivity and the system starts to go back and forth, and they're both playing a part in that beginning. But then eventually the abusive person starts to go a little further. They get more anxious, they get more involved in the relationship, and more is at stake, and so they have to do more to make sure that they hold on to the person. And 5 years down the road, it is, you look at it, and it's all the quintessential abusive behaviors and qualities. The cycle, the control, the gaslighting, all that. And there's a lot of different main foundations as to why someone would go in that direction, why an abusive person would go down that road. One of the main foundations is preoccupied attachment. One way of looking at preoccupied attachment is like, oh, you're clingy or you're needy or something. But I've seen it develop into abuse from people of all genders. It's not just dudes. So I'm not saying that's going to happen here. I don't even know if they're going to get married. I'm saying this for y'all because I don't want you, one, to be a victim. Also, I don't want you to be an abuser. Some of you, statistically, are probably like that. And I've had emails from abusers and comments below from people saying, wow, I think I've been abusive. And for the first time, I understand that. And I also, from your videos, or talking to me, from your videos, I feel like, although it's terrible, I don't feel like I'm an awful person at the same time, which is, I think, a good approach. Because if you think you're a terrible person, you'll avoid it, right? And that's the way the general public talks about it, especially online. So I don't want you to be a victim. I want you to be able to detect it and advocate for yourself, either getting out, getting to therapy, whatever. But I also don't want you to abuse. Good people can be abusive, especially when they get close to someone and they get triggered chronically and they had something modeled to them. And there's a lot of different kinds of abuse. It's not just violence, right? There's emotional abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse. And almost every person that I've worked with who eventually says, oh my God, I was abusive, they were adamant that they were not abusive in the beginning. They were 100 billion% sure. No, I'm not abusive. It's crazy. So let's all do what we can to make the world a better place. You can stop abuse happening to you. You can stop abusing people. You can see it in others. Let's be rational about it. Let's not just say, abusive, shame.
You drive me nuts. Buckle up, baby.
Love you.
I love you. You make me so nervous.
And if I did see this couple, say a year or two down the road, and they had a more chronic, just a more intense version of what's happening right here, which is likely to happen if they don't have concentrated, specialized treatment. Not that there's something terribly pathological about this couple. It's a very common configuration, by the way. If I saw them 1 or 2 years down the road, I would probably say something along these lines at some point to the couple to introduce the notion that, what we're talking about here is priority number one is coercion and abuse and dominance and control. That has to stop first before we can get to those other things. And a word for that is abuse. And there's a cycle, like abusive people, if you can get them on board, I need to have a strong relationship with them. I need to deliver it to them well. I might even meet with that abusive person alone in the couple configuration so I can gauge their response and, not humiliate them in front of their partner. It's not humiliating to me. And I don't think anyone should be humiliated by this kind of conversation, but people often will be. If I have a good enough relationship with them, they trust me and they work with me. I've had couples further down the road where the abusive wife will say, you know what, this week I did some of the abusive stuff again. I don't know what to think about it because I kind of feel like it was okay, but it probably wasn't okay. That's where I want to be, because it's not going to go away immediately. They might always have that tendency, and understanding it, understanding the impulse, understanding the foundation, understanding the pattern, the abusive person can absolutely get to that point. The way the internet talks about them, they're lost causes, they're completely irredeemable, they're evil, they need to be shunned and shamed and thrown off the face of the earth. If we did that, I don't know, 1/3 of human beings would be thrown off the face of the earth.
Thanks for talking to me. Thanks for loving me.
I just gotta say, I just gotta say, I'm feeling good.
Having said all that, if you are in an abusive relationship, I'm not saying you have to seek treatment and repair. If you're in an abusive relationship, especially if, well, I won't say that, but if you're in an abusive relationship, the best answer might be to leave. Even though it is possible for the abuser to recover and repair, it's not your job as it's my job as a therapist to stick with abusers through that. It is not your job as a victim to see that through. I always say this. I have been in relationships with abusive people, either, personal or work or something. And my life and the way those situations worked out is I extract myself, even though I know it's likely going to be yet another reason why that abusive person has the foundation that they do. I'm going to contribute to their pain because I am going to extract myself. Now, I don't do it like a cold-hearted bastard, and I don't know if it's going to harm them, but I don't care. I wasn't put on this earth as a citizen to sacrifice myself for someone else's journey. You know what I mean? There's something real cartoony. It's like whenever they create a movie about some sort of apocalypse of Suburbia, this is what there was that one movie where there was this couple and they lost their memory and they live in a neighborhood like this, and it's just like they climb up on top of the roof and they just see houses for miles and no one else is in the neighborhood. It's like this. Do you know this movie? Anyway, I mean, it's just houses, but I don't know. Is this the new trend? Because to me, typically what you're going for is to make it not look like cookie cutter. This is like purposely cookie cutter. That's fine. You can fit a lot of homes if you're doing that, right? I'm just curious. You have all this money, and you're trying to sell these homes when you're building them. So they must have thought this is trendy and this will appeal. Typically, what builders are trying to do is maximize the space while cramming in as many people as possible. And what they do is they kind of break up the lines. So although you are cramped, it doesn't look as cramped. This looks super cramped. Maybe they're just like, fuck it. Don't lie to the buyer. It's cramped. What are you going to do? All right. Well, I want to remind everyone that this business called Psychology in Seattle is, I don't know exactly how to measure this, but we are basically carbon neutral because I am trying to not cause more problems to our environment and to climate change. So when you watch this channel, you can know that, like when you go into a business and they are trying to be environmentally friendly, it just feels better. Here in Seattle, like Taco Time does that. They have, compostable, all their containers and straws and cups and everything. It's all at least advertised as compostable, And why does that word sound funny when I say it out loud, compostable? The reason why I can say that we are at least close to carbon neutral or we're very environmentally friendly is that all the electricity I'm using right now is, when we average it out over the year, most of the electricity that I use is from solar because I invested in solar on my house, and a lot of it. It wasn't cheap. Often they talk about it being affordable. I'm like, oh, but I want to be a force for good, so I'm willing to invest that money. Also, I don't drive very much because I work from home. I'm a homebody, and so I don't really even drive very much. Also, in Washington State, a lot, if not the majority of our electricity is from renewables, from non-carbon producing sources of electricity. So even the stuff that we're pulling off the grid is pretty environmentally friendly, unless you consider the fisheries and the ecology of the rivers because of the dams and stuff. So, it's not great. But it's all plus and minuses. I'd rather have that than a bunch of cars or coal, that kind of producing. Anyway, so, sometimes it's just, you just feel it's just a little bit like when I walk into Taco Time. I mean, I'm going to Taco Time anyway if you're from Seattle, because I'm definitely going to get that habanero burrito and those tater tots. That's going to happen anyway. But you just feel a little better when you know that they're doing what they can. Well, I'm doing what I can. So that's that. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.